Let me ask you a question that might be uncomfortable. How many times have you done everything you were taught? The visualization, the affirmation, the anticipatory gratitude. You created your vision board, read the books, listened to the podcasts, paid for the courses, applied the techniques with discipline, and yet you're still waiting for something that simply never arrived. Now answer me this. What if the problem isn't that you're not doing enough? What if the problem is precisely that you never stop doing it? This goes against everything you've been taught. I know, but it's the most honest thing anyone can tell you about manifestation. What's blocking you isn't what's missing. It's what you insist on carrying. It's the energy you carry with you. There is a hidden pattern that precedes every real transformation in someone's life. This pattern doesn't emerge when a person is trying harder. It doesn't appear when they are trying more diligently, applying more techniques, meditating for more hours. It arises at the exact moment when something within them simply stops. Stops forcing, stops doubting, stops pursuing. And that is the moment when the quantum field finally responds. Today you'll understand why stopping isn't giving up, why stopping is the beginning of everything, and why the life you want isn't waiting for more effort from you. It's waiting for you to stop blocking it. We were raised in a culture that glorifies struggle. From our earliest years, we learn a simple equation: results equal effort, that the value of an achievement is proportional to how much it cost, that if it came easily, it wasn't meant to last, that if it didn't hurt, it's because you didn't truly deserve it. This belief doesn't just stay in our conscious thoughts. Over time, it descends. It settles in the body, in the way you breathe when you think about what you want, in the tension you carry when you try to get closer to your goals. It becomes part of your vibrational signature, that frequency you emit all the time, even when you are absolutely convinced that you are working to change. And here's the point nobody tells you. The quantum field doesn't respond to how much effort you put in. It's not measuring your hours of meditation. It's not evaluating the consistency of your affirmations. It responds to who you are, to the coherence between what you think, what you feel, and what you embody in your state of being moment by moment. It's not about what you do. It's about who you are while you do it. When you chase after something, even with the best intentions, what you transmit is not desire. It's lack. It's urgency. It's the vibration of someone who doesn't yet have it, who needs it, who is waiting for something external to complete something internal. And the field, like an absolutely precise mirror, reflects exactly that. The experience of someone who is still searching. The reality of someone who hasn't yet arrived, not because he's cruel, not because there's some cosmic conspiracy against you, but because he's precise, mathematically precise. He simply reflects what he receives. Think about it this way. Have you ever tried to catch water with your hands clenched? It's a simple but revealing exercise. The more force you apply, the more you clench your fist trying to hold it, the more water slips through your fingers. The water isn't resisting you. It has no intention of contradicting you. It simply follows its nature. And so does the quantum field. There is a fundamental difference between receiving and capturing, between being available and chasing. And that difference isn't in the amount of effort you put in, it's in the quality of presence you inhabit. Real change, a genuine alteration of your reality, doesn't happen when you push harder. It happens the moment something inside you loosens, when the tension of the search dissolves, when you stop positioning yourself as someone who is still trying to arrive and begin to inhabit, even if only for a few moments, the frequency of someone who has already arrived. It is in this moment of stillness that the field can finally hear you. It is in that space between effort and surrender that true transformation resides. But I need to be even more specific here, because there's a very common misconception that arises when people hear this for the first time. When you hear "stop trying," the mind immediately interprets it as "give up," as "stand still," as "do nothing." And that interpretation is exactly what prevents most people from getting where they want to go. Stopping the effort isn't inaction. It's a radically different action. It's the action of aligning instead of pushing, of tuning in instead of forcing, of becoming available instead of chasing. Think about how an antenna works. It doesn't chase the signal. It doesn't push the signal towards it. It simply positions itself correctly, eliminates surrounding noise and becomes available to whatever is already transmitting. The signal already exists. The antenna's job is not to interfere with it. You are the antenna. The field is already transmitting. Your transformation, the life you want, the version of yourself you want to inhabit, all of this already exists as a possibility in the quantum field. Your job is not to create this possibility, it's to stop interfering with its reception. And the main source of interference is precisely the anxious effort, the desperate wanting, the urgency that transforms desire into need and need into blockage. But there's something deeper happening here, something that goes beyond the simple instruction to relax or let go of control. Because if it were just that, you would have already done it. And if you're reading this, you've probably already tried. You've already tried to relax. You've already tried to let go. And even letting go, you felt it wasn't working. The problem isn't that you can't stop trying. The problem is that you don't know what to do when you stop. Silence feels empty. The absence of effort feels like inaction. Stillness feels like laziness or resignation. And that's exactly where most people fail, not in the execution of the techniques, in understanding what happens in the space between the techniques. You were taught how to do. No one taught you how to be. And the difference between those two things is everything. When you do this, you operate from a position of lack. You are trying to create something that doesn't yet exist in your reality. You are trying to convince the field that you deserve it, that you are ready, that you have done enough. And all this activity, however well-intentioned, carries with it the vibration of someone who is still on the outside looking in. When you operate from a different position. You're not trying to create. You're aligning with what already exists. You're tuning in like a radio that stops turning the dial and finally finds the right frequency. And when that happens, there is no effort. There is only resonance. This is the secret behind the title of this video. It's not about working less. It's about changing what's underneath the work. It's about transforming the frequency from which you operate. Because when that frequency changes, everything changes. Not as a result of more effort, as a natural result of a new coherence. And consistency, you'll discover, is the key to everything. Your energy is always being transmitted. This is a fact that goes far beyond any spiritual concept. Neuroscientists call it a state of being. Quantum physicists talk about information fields. Regardless of the language you prefer, the principle is the same. You don't just transmit when you meditate, when you pray, when you make your affirmations with conscious intention. You transmit all the time, every second of every day. And what you transmit is not your conscious intention, it's your embodiment, it's the emotional tone of your inner state when your guard is down, when you're not performing spirituality but simply existing. You can say you're ready to receive. You can visualize in minute detail the life you desire. You can write your affirmations in beautiful handwriting in a special notebook. But if beneath all this activity there is a sign of doubt, of urgency, of fear of not deserving it, of anxiety about when it will arrive, that is the signal the field is picking up, not the conscious intention, the underlying frequency. And the field doesn't respond to human language. It doesn't respond to your words. It mirrors the resonance, the vibration that lies beneath the words. Take a break now, not a mental one, a real break. Place your hand on your chest and feel. When no one is watching, when you are not actively doing spiritual work, what is the emotional climate of your inner world? What do you feel when you think about the life you want? Is there a calm expectation, a tranquil certainty that it's on its way? Or is there a subtle, almost imperceptible anxiety that perhaps it won't arrive, that perhaps it's not for you? This is your true frequency, not what you claim, what you feel when you let your guard down. And here's the good news, and it's genuinely good. This isn't a flaw in you. It's not proof that you're not progressing. It's a pattern, a learned pattern, conditioned over years of experiences that taught you to distrust ease, to expect pain before reward, not to trust too much in what seems good. And patterns can be recognized, they can be understood. And when truly understood in depth, they begin to dissolve on their own. The first move in this direction is what I call radical self-awareness. Not the superficial kind of observing your thoughts at the end of the day in a journal. Not the generic reflection on how you felt. but the kind of awareness that allows you to perceive in real time the exact moment you are operating from the frequency of lack, without judging yourself for it, without collapsing upon discovery, without immediately trying to fix it, just observing. Because it is through observation that the pattern loses its power, not through fighting against it, through observation. And it is there, in that space of silent awareness, that the real cleansing of its signal begins. I'm going to give you a concrete exercise to start developing this now. For the next 3 days, every time you notice yourself thinking about what you want, be it abundance, a relationship, health, fulfillment, I want you to pause for 5 seconds before continuing. Not to analyze, not to correct, just to feel the emotional tone that accompanies that thought. Is there lightness in it? Is there an expansive, open, confident quality? Or is there tension, a subtle sense of urgency, of needing, of wanting too much? You don't need to change anything right now, just observe, record, familiarize yourself with your actual signal, because you cannot transform what you cannot see. And once you begin to see clearly and without judgment, the cleansing process begins naturally, not because you are forcing change, because consciousness, by its very nature, transforms that which it illuminates. There's a phenomenon that almost no one talks about openly, but that practically everyone who works with personal transformation has experienced. I call it resistance to ease. It's that specific moment when things start to flow, when a door opens without you forcing it, when perfect synchronicity appears out of nowhere, an unexpected connection, an opportunity you weren't looking for, a thought that arrives with strange clarity, and instead of relaxing and receiving, you feel a surge of anxiety, an inner voice that says, "This is too good to be true. Something's wrong here. It can't be this simple. This won't last." Do you recognize this pattern? It happens because ease is a direct threat to the identity we've built around struggle. Think about it. If you've spent years defining yourself as someone who fights, who perseveres, who doesn't give up despite everything, what happens to that identity when change comes without a fight? If the answer lay in ease, what was the purpose of so much suffering? The ego doesn't consciously perform this equation, but it senses it, and it reacts, because simplicity is a direct threat to the false self. That identity built brick by brick from the narrative of struggle. Because if change is simple, what does that say about all the years of effort? If the answer was easy, what was the purpose of the identity you forged around trying, fixing, proving your worth? Simplicity disarms the drama, and when the drama ceases, there is nowhere left to hide. That's why many people sabotage their own transformations at the very moment they are about to solidify, not because they are incapable, not because they don't deserve it, but because they are afraid of the silence that comes when the struggle ends, because they don't know who they are without the quest. They wait for lightning, for a dramatic and unmistakable experience that validates the change, that justifies the previous suffering, that makes the process seem proportional to how much it cost. But the field doesn't work that way. It offers stillness. It offers the subtle. It offers what seems almost imperceptible until you look back and realize that everything changed without you having felt the exact moment. And it is precisely in this stillness that real transformation happens. So the question that really matters isn't, how can I try harder? It's not, what am I doing wrong? The question that opens the portal is this: would I be able to tolerate ease without sabotaging myself? Would I be able to receive without immediately doubting that I deserve it? To let something good remain without creating a problem to justify its arrival? There is a second layer to this process that very few people get to explore: radical responsibility. I'm not talking about blaming yourself for everything that happens. That's not the point. I'm talking about something much more sophisticated, claiming complete ownership of everything you're putting out, especially the parts you'd rather deny, project onto others, attribute to circumstances. When something isn't working in your life, the automatic response is to ask, why is this happening to me? Who or what is blocking me? What's missing? And this question, while understandable, keeps you positioned as a passive recipient of a reality that happens to you, not as an active creator of a reality that happens through you. The change in question seems small, but it changes everything. When you start asking, what is this showing me about my own resonance? What in my current frequency is attracting this experience? What am I emitting that the field is mirroring back in this way? You stop being a victim and start being an agent. Victimhood is a noisy frequency, high, intense but incoherent. It generates a lot of noise but little signal. Responsibility is silent, almost imperceptible from the outside, but magnetic, absolutely magnetic. And it is from this position of radical responsibility that their field truly begins to reorganize itself. There is a distinction that most people who study manifestation never really stop to consider, and it's a distinction that absolutely changes everything when you understand it not only with your mind but with your body. The difference between manifesting and transforming. Manifesting, as it's taught in most places, carries a specific energy, that of creating something from a place of lack. You are here. What you want is there. And you use techniques, practices, rituals, affirmations to bridge the distance between the 2 points. The implicit assumption is that a distance exists, that you don't yet have it, that you are moving towards something that isn't yet real. Transformation is fundamentally different. Transformation is about embracing the version of yourself that already exists in another realm of possibility, not as performance, not as positive pretense, not as an attempt to convince yourself of something your current experience contradicts, but as a genuine grounded recognition that this version is already real in the quantum realm. It's already available, and the only thing separating it from your current physical reality is the frequency filter through which you are operating now. And this filter isn't time. It isn't accumulated effort. It isn't even merit, however much you've been taught to believe that. It's simply the coherence pattern of your current frequency. It's the vibrational signature you carry. And vibrational signatures can change, not with time, with consciousness. Here's what quantum physics offers us as a model for understanding this. Subatomic particles exist simultaneously in multiple states of possibility, which physicists call superposition. They do not solidify into a specific reality until they are observed, measured, focused. This is what we call the collapse of the wave function, the moment when the field of possibility resolves into a specific reality. What does this mean for you in practice? This means that your attention is not passive. It is not merely a result of your reality. It is an active part of its creation. Your attention chooses which version of reality collapses into matter, which timeline moves forward. But fragmented attention generates fragmented reality. If you think about abundance in the morning during meditation, worry about bills in the afternoon while working, and fall asleep at night in a fog of doubt about whether you're on the right track, the field isn't receiving a clear signal. It's receiving static, and static as a response from the field generates delay. It generates confusion. It generates mixed and inconsistent results that seem to confirm the doubt, which generates more static, which generates more confusion, a perfectly circular cycle. When your attention becomes focused, when you learn to sustain your vision without desperately pursuing it, without needing it like an addict needs a fix, without doubting it the moment external evidence doesn't confirm it, something extraordinary begins to happen. The timeline corresponding to that vision begins to organize itself around you. The right people appear. The necessary resources emerge. Circumstances align, not through effort, through energetic drift, through pure resonance. You are not forcing reality to change. You are collapsing into the version of reality that already vibrates at your chosen frequency. But there's a nuance here that almost no one mentions. And that's exactly where most people fail, even when they understand the principles intellectually. You don't change just by thinking. You change with your identity. Your thoughts may desire change. They may visualize change with rich, vivid detail. But your subconscious identity, the deep emotional signature often unspoken, sometimes completely invisible to consciousness from which you operate day to day, that identity may still be completely tuned to the old pattern. And if that's the case, and it is for most people, the field will always mirror identity, not fleeting thought, not the conscious intention of the morning. Identity. what you are when you're not paying attention. This is where inner work becomes sacred, not as a to-do list, not as just another technique to master, but as a constant return to oneself, a gentle and persistent recognition of who you truly are, beneath everything that has been superimposed by conditioning, by difficult experiences, by narratives you have absorbed and never questioned. Each time you bring yourself back to coherence, not from a place of fixing yourself but of remembering, you reinforce a new identity. Not an identity you are trying to become, one that already exists within you, waiting for permission to lead. So the question that really matters isn't, who do I need to become? It's, who am I already when I stop hiding behind the patterns I've learned? Who am I at my cleanest, truest, most essential frequency? This is the identity that the field recognizes. This is the version of you that collapses the reality you desire. Now, I need to talk to you about something that most people completely misinterpret. And it's this mistake that makes so many people give up at the most critical moment of their transformation. There is a moment that precedes almost every real transformation, a moment that seems, in every sense, the opposite of progress. You start to feel like things are falling apart, that the ground is giving way, an inexplicable restlessness, a feeling that the path that seemed clear has suddenly dissolved, a fatigue that is not just physical, a confusion that doesn't respond to logic. Most people interpret this as failure, as evidence that it's not working, that maybe it never will work, and it's precisely at this point on the threshold of change that they give up, that they revert to the old pattern, that they restart the cycle. But this moment is not a failure, it's a calibration. Imagine tuning an analog radio. To change from one station to another, you inevitably pass through a moment of static, a shapeless noise, without melody, without apparent meaning. This moment doesn't mean the new station doesn't exist. It doesn't mean you're going in the wrong direction. It's simply what happens in the transition between two frequencies. This static, in the realm of human consciousness, manifests as disorientation, as emotional noise, as that almost irresistible urge to run back to what was familiar, to the old pattern, to the known pain that at least is known. What's really happening beneath all this apparent disorder is that the energy that held your old identity together is falling apart. The beliefs, the emotional habits, the thought loops that defined who you were are losing their electrical charge. And without that charge, the ego panics. It manufactures fear, it generates doubt, it creates unease. It does everything it can to pull you back into familiar territory. This is not a warning of danger, it's a sign that you're on the threshold. If it feels unstable, you're close. If things seem uncertain, you're almost there. What you're experiencing is your frequency shedding everything that's no longer aligned with who you're becoming. It's the natural friction of transformation. And this friction doesn't require more effort, it requires more presence. What to do in this space? Absolutely nothing in the way you're used to. It's not a time to fix things, to try harder, to apply yet another technique. It's a time to tune in, to breathe into the discomfort without trying to expel it, to observe the stories the mind fabricates without believing they are the truth, to soften into the timeline that is emerging, even if you can't yet see it clearly. Your job is not to force a new reality into existence. Your job is to make yourself available to it. If you've made it this far, something inside you already recognizes this truth, not just as an interesting concept, as a memory, as something you've always known at some deeper level, but perhaps never had the precise words to name. And I want to tell you something important before we continue. Understanding these principles is the first step. It's a real, genuine, necessary step. But there's a considerable distance between understanding and incorporating them, between knowing the map and knowing how to navigate the territory. And that distance isn't covered with more knowledge. It's covered with structured practice, with support, with a path that helps you maintain consistency when the process gets difficult. Because it becomes difficult, not because you're failing, but because the ego is persistent, because old patterns have years of practice, because maintaining consistency, when external evidence hasn't yet changed, requires a skill that isn't developed simply by listening or reading. That's why I created the Surrender Code. It's not just another manifestation method. It's not a collection of new techniques to add to your routine. It's a map of the internal process, a practical and structured guide for people who understand the principles, who resonate with the depth of this work, but who get stuck when it comes to applying them, who begin the transformation with clarity and can't maintain consistency when the process becomes uncomfortable, when the threshold appears, when the ego panics. The Surrender Code shows you how to navigate this space without abandoning the frequency, how to recognize the threshold for what it truly is, how to sustain the signal even when nothing around you yet confirms the change. If this resonates with what you're experiencing, the link is in the first pinned comment below. Take your time looking at it, no pressure. Perhaps it's exactly what you need to finally make what you already understand your lived reality. Let's talk now about the most paradoxical skill of this entire journey, the one that scares us the most, the one that liberates us the most: detachment from perception. We have been trained since childhood to judge every experience, to categorize, to evaluate, to assign immediate meaning to what happens. This is good, that is bad. This means I am progressing. That means I have failed. This sign is positive. That is an obstacle. This habit of continuous judgment seems harmless. It simply seems like how the mind works, but it has a direct consequence on your frequency. It keeps you constantly oscillating between states, between hope when something seems good and discouragement when something seems bad, between certainty when the evidence confirms and doubt when it contradicts. And this oscillation is precisely what prevents coherence, what fragments the signal, what delays the change. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It's not emotional anesthesia. It's not pretending everything is okay when it's not. It means you don't definitively label the experience while it's still happening. You allow it to flow through you, to be what it needs to be, without immediately assigning it a verdict that determines whether you're close or far, whether you're winning or losing, whether the field is working or not. Because the quantum field does not operate linearly. It does not function in an ordered progression from point A to point B. What seems like a setback may be the necessary step for the next advance. What seems like a failure may be the final dissolution before stabilization. What seems like the darkest moment may be precisely the calibration that precedes the arrival of light. And along with detachment comes what is perhaps the rarest skill of this entire journey: state sovereignty. State sovereignty is the ability to maintain your chosen frequency regardless of what happens around you. Not because you are indifferent to the outside world, not because you are denying the reality of your current circumstances, but because you have understood, deeply and embodiedly, that current circumstances are a reflection of your past signal, not your present signal. Most people invert this logic. They expect life to validate the state they wish to feel. They expect money to arrive so they feel abundant. They expect a relationship to appear so they feel loved. They expect their body to change so they feel secure. They expect external evidence to confirm it so they can finally allow themselves to feel what they want to feel. But that's outsourcing your frequency to circumstances. It's letting the mirror determine what you display to the mirror. It's a loop that closes in on itself and goes nowhere. True reality changers do the opposite. They maintain their chosen frequency until life has no other option but to reflect it. Not as a performance for the universe, not as a forced positivity that denies what is real, but as a calm, anchored, silent certainty, the certainty of someone who simply knows. This is emotional mastery, it's energetic maturity, and that's exactly what the quantum field recognizes as a clear, clean, unmistakable signal. But how do you develop this in practice? How do you learn to maintain frequency when everything around you seems to contradict what you are holding internally? The answer is not in ignoring external reality. It's in changing the relationship you have with it, in ceasing to use circumstances as a barometer of your spiritual progress, in ceasing to let what you see determine what you feel. This doesn't happen all at once. It happens in moments, in small, repeated choices. Every time you notice that you are letting circumstance determine your state, and you consciously choose to return to the frequency you want to inhabit, you are practicing state sovereignty. You are developing the muscle that, over time, makes that frequency not a sporadic achievement, but your new baseline. And the more this frequency becomes your baseline, the more the field around you begins to mirror it. Not as a reward, as a natural consequence, as the only thing the field can do in the face of a coherent and sustained signal. Coherence. That single word sums up everything we've seen so far. Not perfection, not the absence of doubt, fear, or uncertainty. Coherence. The profound, albeit imperfect and ongoing alignment between what you think, what you feel, and who you are being. When these three elements vibrate in approximately the same direction, your signal reaches the field in a way that it can interpret. Clean, clear, recognizable. But most people try to force coherence. They try to think their way to a feeling. They analyze its vibrations so frequently and intensely that the very act of analyzing generates the anxiety that destroys the coherence they were trying to create. They micromanage their inner state as if it were an engineering project that can be controlled with sufficient precision. Consistency doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender. Not surrendering to failure, surrendering to simplicity. To the truth that you already are what you are trying to become, that the version of you living the life you envision is not in some distant future waiting to be achieved. It is available now, accessible now, and you access it not by reaching out to grasp it, but by opening yourself to receive it. You can't fake resonance, you can't intellectualize your way to magnetic alignment. You have to feel it. You have to soften into the truth of who you already are, beneath everything that has been superimposed. And this softening has a specific flavor that you'll recognize when it happens. It's not euphoria. It's not the excitement of a new discovery. It's something quieter, a feeling of coming home, that you were looking outside for what was always inside, that the race you'd been running wasn't necessary. It never was necessary. This realization may appear during a moment of meditation. It may appear in the middle of a walk. It may appear right now as you listen to this. And when it appears, don't analyze it. Don't try to capture it. Don't try to hold on tightly. Just allow it. Just receive it. Because that is the fundamental gesture of everything we are talking about. Not the gesture of reaching out, the gesture of receiving, open, available, without deserving it first, without proving anything. Just present for what is already here. The signal to which the quantum field responds unequivocally is not that of someone trying very hard. It is not that of someone doing a lot. It is that of someone who simply is, who carries the silent certainty of someone who has already arrived, even before the evidence appears in the physical world, who does not need external confirmation to maintain their internal frequency. I already am. I already possess. I already resonate with it. Not as an empty affirmation repeated without conviction, as embodied truth. As the tone from which you operate. This is where the field begins to reorganize itself, not through effort, not through struggle, through alignment. And attunement, you will discover, is the most powerful act there is, not because it's difficult, but because it requires you to abandon the belief that it needs to be difficult. It requires you to trust in simplicity, to surrender to what is already true, to stop chasing and finally begin to receive. Let me tell you one last thing before I finish. The life you desire isn't on the other side of yet another effort. It's not waiting for you to do one more thing, apply one more technique, prove once again that you deserve it. It's on the other side of surrender, of yielding. Not to defeat, not to the simplicity of your own truth. You don't change quantumly by doing more. You change by aligning yourself in a cleaner, calmer, more truthful way. You change when you stop chasing the version of yourself that already exists and simply begin to be that version. Not as performance, as recognition. And this recognition doesn't need to be perfect or constant from the very first moment. It begins in flashes, in moments of clarity that lengthen with practice, in moments of stillness where you feel, even briefly, that you need nothing more than what already is. These moments are the seed of the new frequency. And seeds, when cultivated with attention and not with anxiety, grow at the right pace. When this happens, and it will happen, life ceases to be a quest and becomes a mirror. Your energy enters the room before you do. You ask for less and receive more. You exert less effort and produce more results. Not because you are manipulating the field, but because you are the field in harmony with yourself. If something in this video resonated with you, start with a simple step. Write in the comments, "I am the change, not for the universe, for you," as a reminder that you will no longer wait for permission to be who you already are. And if you want a structured path to deepen this work, to maintain consistency when the process gets difficult, the surrender code is waiting for you in the first pinned comment. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, because every broadcast here is a frequency, and frequency recognizes frequency. Until next time. Or until you stop looking outside for what has always been inside,